trust is a very, very important thing, a very important topic, if you will, both in loads and loads of different contexts and senses. If you imagine scientifically, trust is a very, very important thing because you don't know what scientific knowledge to trust on the internet. And my place is not to tell you which is good. My place is not to tell you that mine is going to be the best, because I probably could have potentially trusted wrong things on the internet that meant that the information that I relayed could have potentially been false. I hope this is not the case, because I don't like that to happen. I will almost not hate myself, but I will feel a sort of weird sort of guilty sense if I did that, because I'm providing this misinformation that I not intentionally provided, but I like to make sure that my sources are going to be good and trustworthy, because that means that I myself am a source, am trustworthy, and you can sort of trust me in a way. But there's going to potentially be something that I've said that's wrong. I found multiple times while editing my videos that some of the things that I've said in that video have been wrong, and then I've had to cut it out. I've had to replace it with something, not necessarily like a disclaimer or anything, but just something that was actually correct, because I did some shoddy research during the scripting of my video that meant that when recording, I would have sort of just said that because that's on my script. But the problem is that when I got to editing, I might just return to my senses. I might see that seems a little bit wrong, and so I'm going to edit it out, or actually do some further research and figure out that it's wrong in the end. But what's interesting is that it's very, very hard to know what to trust on the internet, because I've said this so many times before, but you honestly have to trust yourself. If you think that something's going to be right for you, chances are it's going to be right for you. This mainly only applies to people that aren't going to sort of fool themselves into thinking that if my brain really wants a load of sugar right now, that means it's going to be good for me, because obviously that's not you talking, that's your addictions talking, that's not your sort of soul talking to you, that's your monkey brain, your sort of system 1 brain, the just immediate response brain that's saying, yeah, let's get as much dopamine as possible. If you rationally thought about that sort of want for sugar, you'd realize that it just doesn't, you didn't need that at all, and so you'd sort of end up coming to your senses, realizing that, yeah, that was a bad decision. So that kind of makes sense. You shouldn't necessarily always just immediately trust your immediate response. If your immediate response comes from your brain, then I reckon that that's maybe something to sort of ponder on, maybe something that you should think about. If that immediate response is from your gut, maybe that is something that you should take note of. Maybe don't act on it immediately, because it could be a false sort of alarm in a way. But it's something to also think about. Think about, if my gut's telling me that I should do this or not do this, eat this, not eat this, eat that, make that, cook this, do this, etc., etc. If my gut's telling me to do something like that, but I probably should trust it more than my sort of immediate sort of brain response is going to tell me to crave as much sugar as possible, because that's not the best way to go about things whatsoever. But there is so much scientific knowledge on the internet, information on the internet. It's so hard to come by any decent sources. It's hard to come by anything that matches each other, any sort of reputable, repeatable information. Very, very, very hard whatsoever. ChatGPT is going to say one thing, Wikipedia is going to say another thing, YouTube's going to say another thing, there's going to be some ScienceDirect.com, ResearchGate.net that's going to say another thing. So complicated, so confusing. And I just want to give you a bit of reassurance that it's not going to kill you if you trust, well, I say that. I just want to give you a weird sense of reassurance in a way, because there is so much knowledge out there, information out there in the world. It's hard to decipher it all. It's so hard to figure out what the most optimal diet is, because someone will say one thing, another person will say another thing. It's hard to just dictate which one's the most reputable source, because one may actually be more scientifically and factually correct towards your own bodily systems, but one may be the more reputable source because they've got a PhD or something like that. You really just have to trust yourself. I reckon taking some time away from the sort of input of the internet is actually the most beneficial thing that you can do. Trust your gut. If something hurts 2 hours, 4 hours after you eat it, go off it for 4 weeks, then maybe not 4 weeks, I'd say go off it for 2 weeks, re-add it back into your diet. If you experience no other symptoms, chances are it was probably just some other environmental thing. Hopefully 2 weeks isn't going to be too hampering to your sort of daily routine, your daily meal plan, etc. Because that's not what I want to do to you if it does end up just being a random coincidence. Just see how it goes. If you're still feeling bad after you eliminated that food, eliminate another food and bring that one back, and just sort of see how it goes, because it's really a good idea to like find out what's going to improve your quality of life. Because while someone may say the carnivore diet is going to be the best diet for like the world, they're really referring to themselves and their own health, because that might be the best diet for them due to their ancestral genetics. But chances are there could be some agrarian diet out there where all they did all day, all their ancestors did all day was eat crops, grow crops, and farm sort of cattle, more civilized meat sources and like meat-based sources. So they'd have a lot of dairy, they'd have a lot of eggs. They probably wouldn't necessarily have as much meat because they would want that cattle, that meat, for actual that sort of constant stream of production of things like eggs, milk, cheese, yogurt, etc., etc. That might be beneficial to some people. The first sort of interesting debate topic that I realized about this was like quite a while ago, 7-8 months ago, was something known as the blood type diet, where you eat based on your blood type. Problem is, I honestly think it's more specific than that. While it said in that book that blood type O, for instance, should be more of a meat eater, be more carnivorous. Things like blood type A could be more agrarian, more vegetarian, eat less meat than someone on blood type O because of certain things that are attached to their blood cells, their normal cells, etc., etc. It was all a very interesting thing that opened up my mind to this sort of topic. And I honestly, once I sort of pondered on it more, saw all the conflicting diet advice on the internet, I realized that everyone was just spouting what worked for them. And while that's no bad thing, what works for you could be entirely different. That's not to say that I don't think you should necessarily try out some of these things, because you will have very similar genetics to some people. So similar that having the same diet will be the most optimal for both of the parties involved. But for a lot of people, that won't be the case. So they may try a diet, not have like a good quality of life on it, because they may sort of have a less good digestive response, blood response. That means that they should probably try another diet, and they should listen to their gut. Not always try things that other people have said. Incorporate different things from 2s, 3s, like 4 different diets, etc., to see just what works for them. Trusting things on the internet is such a hard thing. I recommend either trying things, like trying other things, or just taking some time away from that stuff entirely to see just what works for you. Because I do think genetically and individually, we all need different things. All of us genetically will have nutritional imbalances. Someone will need more calcium than another person because of a genetic deficiency, genetic imbalances. Our genetics are so vast and so complicated. All the genes that will be taken out in the nucleus go into the RNA, mRNA, go through the ribosome, go through protein synthesis, all the different nitrogenous bases and the codons that these produce, leading to the different amino acids making the proteins. That's like 3 nitrogenous bases. There's at least going to be 1 billion of those 3, meaning 3 billion, inside of the body at any given time, considering cells. Some cells are going to last a lifetime. Some cells are going to literally last you a week. It's mad that that exists. And I think that we really need to consider our own genetic limitations, which can be quite hard to discover. Again, hence why it's hard to know who to trust. But even unrelated to science and unrelated to everything that I've talked about so far, it's hard to know which people to trust in a social sense. Now, I don't really have much to say on this. I'm not a big people person whatsoever. If you had like a scale of introverted to extroverted, despite the fact that I'm putting myself out here despite the fact that I'm putting myself out here publicly on this space of YouTube, I would still say in terms of existing with people, I'm probably around 60 to 70% introverted and only 30 to 40% extroverted. I just don't really, I'm not really a big fan of just meeting loads and loads of new people at any given time. Like big, massive swarms and crowds of people are just not my thing. But I can understand for those that are more people, it can be very, very hard to know who to trust. Even me, I will still sometimes get caught out and just build some kind of friendship with someone who ends up just being a terrible person in the end, which is not like a good thing. But that's going to happen so much more with people who sort of put themselves about there a lot more in the in real life, sort of in their workplaces, in their schools, in this sort of just general daily routine. It's going to be very, very hard for you to know that who's actually good, who's actually bad, who you should sort of keep as someone that's going to be a true friend and support your growth, because a true friend is someone that does support your growth. Anyone that doesn't, anyone that tries to bring you down, make you do things that you know are not good for you, be like your addiction buddies, people that go to parties with you, even though you're going to say that you're going to try to quit that stuff, quit those addictions, and these people say that you're like a pussy for doing that. They're the kind of people that aren't actually your friends, and they're just there to sort of have a laugh with you. They're your addiction buddies. They're not your friends, basically. And I want you to understand that. But yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with this. I think in the sense of knowing who to trust is incredibly important in just any aspect of your life. I think the one way to tell who you can trust as a person is to tell if they are a true person. A true person, you can have true friends. You can also have true people. True people are the people that just genuinely support anyone's growth. They don't bring people down. They don't do that because that's not how their psyche works. Sometimes true people, they'll have moments where they will accidentally do that. Everyone does. I will. People that are going to swear to not do this again after watching this video, they will also have done it and will potentially do it. I could potentially do it. But it is like a weird emotional response, and it does happen. So if you can separate the true people from the non-true people, the true people will 99% of the time support your growth as a human being. They will help you. They'll give you small little tiny tidbits and snippets of advice onto how to just better yourself when having a conversation with them. But the non-true people, they'll like almost lure you into not doing the things that you've tried to recover from in an addiction sense. They'll be the kind of people who'll say, oh, come on, just one more thing, stay out like this, that, the other. They're the non-true people. You can have your true friends, but as long as you trust the true people, which include the true friends, by the way, I think you as an extroverted person will be all right. Me personally, I don't think I suffer with this too much because I don't speak to that many people on a daily basis. Being around people, being around crowds and events, I wouldn't really like that, and nor would I end up trying to assimilate either. But with that, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you found this advice useful, and I also recommend subscribing because I like this community of young tribal people who are willing to improve themselves, start what they already have, and good luck.